to the cloud. Okay.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Tommy Soares. I'm the Assistant Director of the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology, and Infectious Disease. And today I have the privilege of welcoming Dr. Allyn Spear from Elanco, who is the Principal Research Scientist for Cell Development. Welcome, Dr. Spear. Thank you for joining us today on Pathfinder. It is a pleasure being able to speak to you and catching up with you today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We are so excited to hear a little bit about your background and a little bit about, what are you doing in cell development now at Elanco and what brought you here to Indiana? So maybe we can start a little bit about your background, your education, your preparation.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I grew up in Wisconsin. I went to undergraduate at University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. I had an opportunity to do some undergraduate research in virology and wanted to continue doing that in graduate school. So I did my graduate work at the University of Florida in Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, looking at the molecular biology, protein-protein and protein RNA interactions in poliovirus. So after my time there, I wanted to do something different that wasn't sort of molecular minutia and studying, all the effects of individual mutations and viruses and things. And I saw a postdoc opening in Central Valley, California, with the USDA, actually trying to discover novel insect viruses to control agricultural insect pests and invasive species. So I thought that was definitely something different, and I went out there for a postdoc. Discovered a few new viruses, got exposure to a lot of the ways that the USDA Agriculture Research Service worked and the types of opportunities that were there, which was something I was never aware of really as a graduate student. So I finished up my time there and decided I wanted to get some additional exposure to again something that was different, something I felt like I could try to build a career out of. I think at that point in time, I was still very much in the mindset that I was going to get back into a sort of tenure track faculty research. And I wanted to build my portfolio so that I could be an attractive candidate. And so I ended up taking sort of depending on how you look at it, a senior postdoc or a junior scientist type position at the National Animal Disease Center in Ames, Iowa. So that's also a USDA research station. And I was working on PRRS virus in pigs and looking at potential vaccine platforms and vaccine development. And again, utilizing some of my virology skills, but kind of getting involved more on the animal side of things. I had an opportunity to participate in some very large animal studies that were being done there, looking at the molecular effects of disease, quantitating virus burden and things like that. And then I did at that point, after my sort of term was done there, I looked into all avenues. I looked into mostly trying to get faculty positions. It ended up being that there was a position that opened up again with the USDA back in Milwaukee, which is where I was from. And I thought, man, the opportunity to be back in my hometown and to do, virus research. So I took a position there working on aquaculture. So I moved into aquaculture, sort of immunology and disease, looking at viral hemorrhagic septicemia virus in rainbow trout, in yellow perch, and some of the other sort of relevant aquaculture species. And I got contacted after a couple of years there. I got contacted by a recruiter saying, "Hey, have you ever thought about working in industry?" And I said, "Yeah, no, I actually never thought about working in industry. My entire mindset was about trying to get back to academia." The nice part about the research station in Milwaukee was we were actually co-located with the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee Freshwater Institute. And so I had interactions with academics and the group there and students and things like that. So it was for me, I kind of felt like, oh, this is kind of an almost academic environment. And I initially told the recruiter, no, you know what, I'm not interested. And for a multitude of different reasons, a few days later, I kind of thought, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't just shut that out completely. Maybe I should reconsider. And so I sent him back and I said, hey, look, if you're still interested, let's talk. So I had a conversation and he said, I think you should talk to this hiring manager. So I said, why not? I talked to the hiring manager. They brought me down to Elanco, and I kind of talked to a bunch of people here and saw the stuff that was being done. And I was like, I had no idea that this kind of environment existed. And I came back and I thought, man, that was probably one of the hardest decisions that I've ever made, because I thought, if I make this choice, I don't know if I'm going to be likely to get back into academia. Right. I was living in my hometown with family nearby, which is not something that going into a graduate track that you really ever expect to be able to do. And I just, I had a young family at the time. I had twin girls that were 6 months old. And I thought, this, of all the times that for this opportunity to come up, but yeah, it just, after talking with my wife about it, we just said, okay, if ever there's a time to take a leap and to try it, this would be it. So we went ahead and did it. I was offered the job I think in November, and on January 5th, we were driving down to Indianapolis and moving into a new house and all that stuff. So it was a crazy turn, but yeah, since then, so that was January of 2017. And Elanco's been through a lot of sort of ups and downs. We were a part of Lilly when I joined. We separated from Lilly. We acquired Bayer Animal Health. We acquired a couple of other small biotechs. We've reorged. And all throughout that process, I was brought in as a part of the biopharma expansion. So I was really one of the first people brought in specifically for biopharma, for doing protein therapeutics in animals. And we've grown tremendously in that area. And really what it boils down to in terms of what brought me into my current role was, 4 years ago or so, we were trying to build out, what capacities we needed to really do this. And somebody said, well, we have to have somebody sort of running cell culture and cell line stuff in research. And everybody kind of looked around the room and was like, well, who's got a lot of cell culture experience? I'm like, I guess that's me. and it's that's that sort of serendipitous thing where it just goes, okay, I guess I got to figure out how to make this work. And in all honesty, yes, I had cell culture work, and I do have, a lot of molecular biology and genetics and biochemistry background. So, all that helped me to be ready for it. But I had a huge sort of learning curve to figure out how this works in industry. How to, what do people do, and how do you figure out how to do that? I had a huge amount of support internally at Elanco for people giving me the freedom to figure it out. And that was a tremendous, additional support for not feeling like I had to have all the answers right there at that moment. And I also was fortunate enough to work with a lot of other vendors, third-party, research companies and things that kind of I contacted for services or contacted for licensing for technology platforms, that I kind of said, hey, look, why don't we work something out? Why don't we figure out how to make this work together? And it ended up being great. I have a lot of really good, professional contacts that started off being, for lack of a better phrase, people who were trying to sell me stuff. And that sort of turned into really positive, longer term professional relationships, which has been good.
Fantastic. And Allyn, what I love about your story? There's so many facets that we need to really unpack there, if you don't mind, because
Sure.
First, I really love the concept that, life happens. You were planning one direction and life just happened,
Yeah.
and you were open to the opportunity.
Yeah.
Meaning, it took you double take, it took you twice, and you're lucky that you got that second opportunity to say, no, 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 I'm really interested in talking
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
you. Um, but I mean, just the fact that you were receptive and that you included it as a potential option
Hmm.
is so important for flexibility, teachable moment, for
Yeah.
allowing yourself that flexibility to say, I thought it was going to go this way, but maybe this route could also work out. And well, it must have been scary for you. I like two twin daughters and 6 months old, and like, oh
Yeah.
boy, family all around, peace, harmony. Now we're gonna get up and
Yeah.
leave all of this and go somewhere else. And it must have been difficult conversation, obviously, with
Yeah.
family and so on, and scary. Tell us a little bit about how did you conquer a little bit of that fear? And obviously teamwork with your family
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. I mean, so there was obviously an economics discussion
Yes.
that had to happen because uh, and I have a hugely supportive spouse because she had a job that she loved, and it was, there was a lot, we had a lot going for us positively where we were, and she ultimately kind of said, okay, if we do this, how is this going to work? How what does our path forward look? If we stay, what does it look like if we transition? What are the options? And it was not easy. I can honestly say, if we were to have had that same discussion 10 times over, we might have come to a different conclusion half the time. I just don't, I don't know. Some of it might have been sleep deprivation as well, was playing a role, but ultimately I think what it boiled down to was, my position within the USDA, and I very much enjoyed the work, and I had 3 different USDA positions, and there are some fantastic people in the agency doing amazing work. And the thing that blows me away about it is it's so it's essentially such a quiet area. It's not like anybody's getting a whole lot of accolades doing this, but these are research teams that are developing very valuable information to agriculture that's keeping things moving. But ultimately, there's a budgetary aspect to working at any government agency. And at that particular time, budgets were being cut. There was some question about whether our program was going to get cut and how long that was going to be sustainable, and whether or not I was going to have to find a different position within the agency in 2 years. And so there was a little bit of uncertainty there. Not that there's any such thing as certainty anywhere in any industry or government. So there's that component of it, but I think that did play a role in terms
Yeah.
of what potential opportunities there were. And one of the things that I really did get a positive feeling out of coming to Elanco was talking to people who had taken different roles within the company, that had said, oh, I came here doing this, but actually this opened up and I was able to follow this here. And I was, and so that gave me a little bit more comfort with saying, hey, I'm going to go there. I'm going to try this. I'm going to put everything into this. But if this doesn't work out, or if this doesn't turn out to be what I think it is or hope it to be, there's probably other opportunities for me. And so that was another component of that. And I felt like for the longer term security of sort of my career and for my family, it was going to be the right decision to do that. And I'm very glad I did, because it opened up a whole different world of things that I never knew really existed.
And I want to say, an important lesson for the people listening. that you have taught us, and exactly what you said is, having the confidence that, well, if it doesn't work out, you'll always be able to find something that will accommodate better.
Yeah.
Meaning that it could not have been ever a mistake to go and explore an area, because you never know what's going to turn out from it, or you might learn that, well, that's really not what I like,
Yeah.
and you spend the time figuring that out. At least you know that.
Yeah.
um, it is such a wonderful story also to know your evolution inside Elanco. As you said, a transition from being part of Eli Lilly, which is very
Yeah.
big, to its own thing, and then acquiring companies and growing in its own way, and spin-off companies too. And
Yeah.
what a wonderful period. That must have been exciting, but there must have been also elements for your success. I know, Allyn, yes, you might have done a lot of cell culture
Yeah.
in your past to then infect
Yeah.
them with viruses and grow your plaques and whatever, but still, like, they must have had confidence that, you know what, Allyn will figure it out. Even if he doesn't know all the ins and outs,
Yeah.
he's figuring it out. And what you said that resonated so much with me is that people are giving you the responsibility, but they're giving you the room. They're
Yeah.
giving you the room to grow. They're helping you where you need the help. And you don't feel like, oh, I have to do this all on my own.
Yeah. And honestly, I can say that it's I do have to chuckle a little bit because the perspective of, all the change. I think there's a spectrum of people in terms of how we all manage change. Um, I am going to freely admit I'm not always the best at managing that change, and as a personal development thing, it's something that we all, I think, work on to a point. Um, there the There were big chunks of time for me personally where I would sit back, I'd hear an announcement or something would happen, and I would seriously start thinking, okay, this is the point where they realize they don't need me anymore. You have that thing, because for example, I came in on the guy who hired me was he when he hired me, he said he sort of had a 2-year horizon for retiring, and he wanted to sort of have me work with him and build that skill set, and then have me sort of take over some of these programs. On the day that I started, my first day of orientation, he came and picked me up from orientation and said, we need to talk. So we went and grabbed coffee, and he said, they just announced a voluntary early retirement program, and there's a good chance I'm going to take it. He said, I haven't decided yet, but I'll let you know. I just want you to know you still have a job. And I didn't know how to handle that. He did end up taking it. So 2 weeks after I started, the guy who had hired me that I was supposed to sort of develop under was gone. They had people leave right away. And they transferred me to sort of another group with more sort of bioprocess stuff, which was even further outside of my area of expertise. I had a supervisor who was very much into people development, new supervisor for me, and she was very focused. She gave me a stack of books, which at the time I started thinking, why am I getting a reading assignment? But I mean, all these books about personal development and management skills and all those other kinds of things that had made an impact for her, and she was trying to impart that knowledge to me. And again, in retrospect, I didn't appreciate that as much as I probably should have at the time. The interesting part there was a second voluntary retirement program later that year, and then my new boss took that retirement program. So there was a lot of, and then there was a lot of, we don't know what to do with you. I literally was told at one point by a senior manager that, because I went to them and said, hey, what do you want me to do? Like, I still want a job, but I'm really not sure what you want me to do anymore. And they said, look, we're still figuring that out, but you still have a job. We still
Yes.
want you here. We'll figure it out with you. And it just evolved from there. And when we separated from Eli Lilly, one of my key responsibilities was coordinating our collaboration with the Eli Lilly Antibody Discovery and Engineering Group. So we had very tight collaborations with their group out in San Diego, and that was one of my main responsibilities. And we separated from Eli Lilly, and I thought, great, they're not going to need me around anymore. What do they want me to do? And again, so I've had to work through a bunch of that, because my first reaction in a lot of these cases has been, I'm either obsolete or no longer needed. And I've had a pretty steady stream of either supervisors or colleagues or senior management that have taken the time to make it clear to me that that I'm still needed, that I still have a role, that I still have a place. And you know, when you've got a lot of uncertainty and a lot of changes going on around you, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're gonna have to tell us at least one or two of those book recommendations that they gave you, if they were any good, any of them good that resonated with you.
Yeah, so there, you know, there's a lot of there's you know, Simon Sinek style books. You know, I'll be honest, I have since started reading more of those kinds of things myself, and
Good.
you know, I probably ascribe to some things that are not always easy to implement. There's a whole concept around radical candor. There's a book there, and we've, you know, Elanco has been really big, especially in the last couple of years, of emphasizing this concept of psychological safety and a speak up culture. But ultimately boiling down to, you know, we need people to say what's on their mind. We need people to speak up when they might see something that doesn't make sense. And you can't expect that of people in an environment where they're worried that there might be some negative repercussions when they speak their mind. And so it is a constant effort on the part of, you know, teams, colleagues, supervisors, whatever it might be, to keep the environment positive, and to keep things in a way that people feel like they can say what's on their mind. And that's it's deceptively simple to say, but oftentimes a lot of the unsaid sort of atmospherics can contribute to people not wanting to say something, and so you got to be cognizant of that, and that's definitely something that I've learned and developed since being at Elanco.
Absolutely. And you know, it's something that even within the academic circles, it's something that we practice, right? Is being able to be opinionated about the science, about what you think your perspective is, without hurting other people's feelings.
Yeah,
And then if it's something personal that I can improve in my way or my way of being, to have that openness, somebody to be able to say, hey, you could improve in this way
hmm,
or in that way, without taking it personally. Very interesting. Those are wonderful um, tidbits for us to hear about, because you don't know necessarily how it works inside the company. And
yeah,
are people interested in your success, or are people going to just let you, wallow in your own mess, for lack of
hmm,
a better term, right? It is so, it is for me so apparent when you were speaking, to tell you of how wrong you continue to be, thinking that here, this is it. They're
yeah,
going to get rid of me.
that's right.
That's it. I'm not needed anymore. But that's
Yeah,
absolutely wrong, especially for the evidence that you have in your history and time within the
yeah,
company and everything. So, Allyn, they must value you for more than just your virology expertise. It seems to me that they value you for your prior work ethic, your managerial skills, your receptiveness, your flexibility. I mean, what defines success for you? Like, what do you think have been some of those elements that have given you at least that security,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, there
Yeah.
too?
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting because even from the very beginning when I was hired, uh, I had and not to I am trying to answer your question, I promise. But you know, when I first started applying, you know, for sort of my full-time positions, my as I would call them, my real jobs outside of things, I had probably over the course of a year or two probably applied to about 50 faculty positions. And they ran the gamut from small schools with basically just undergraduate research programs all the way up to, you know, large, big major research institutions. And I didn't get a single interview. I didn't get a phone call. I didn't get anything. And the best that it started getting to the point where I couldn't, you know, I couldn't figure out what the deal was. And you start questioning your skill sets and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And I actually, at the recommendation of a friend of mine who actually was a faculty member, I started trying to solicit some additional feedback from hiring managers or from people associated with the hiring process, and it didn't work most of the time. But in a couple of cases, I was able to get some feedback, and it was varied, but to my benefit, it was incredibly inconsistent. And it was everything from, oh, your proposed research programs are too ambitious. Your proposed research programs aren't ambitious enough. Your research history isn't consistent enough to have us understand what your program is. What type of a researcher are you? You've done this and human health and this and insects and agriculture and all. What is what value does that bring? I was told that because I wasn't coming in with any existing NIH grants or any existing grant funding, that I really wasn't employable. And it ran the gamut from left to right, and I couldn't figure out. I'm like, none of this stuff is something I can fix. I can't fix any of my previous work history. I can't fix. I can ask for an NIH grant. I don't think I'm going to get one. It was all that stuff. And I thought, you started thinking, did I make a mistake by trying to do different things that were interesting to me? Did I make a mistake trying to pursue something based on what I found interesting or scientifically valuable? And then when I was going through the hiring process at Elanco, one of the things that the guy who hired me said to me was, I think that your diversity of experience is incredibly valuable to the kinds of things that we do here. And it was the first time that I had ever heard that from anybody. And I thought, okay, somebody sees my hodgepodge of experience and thinks that that has value. And actually, I think that that's more common in industry than is well known. I think you end up wearing a lot of different hats in industry, and especially if you're at a smaller biotech or a startup, you have to wear different hats, and people who have a diversity of experience do end up being, I think, very valuable to those teams. But realizing that value was very difficult for me prior to being here. So to get back to sort of being successful, I mean, I struggle a lot of times with performance metrics. I don't like them. I personally don't find them valuable, but it's really hard to tell sort of, large companies and organizations that they should just not have any metrics and just trust us. I understand that that's a hard sell. But I really do. I would much rather value the work that I'm doing by the success of the team around me. And I know that that sounds really, sort of kumbaya campfire kind of a thing, but ultimately it's when I think back to one of the reasons why I wanted to be in academics, why I wanted this sort of, professor type of a scenario, was because I had an opportunity to train rotation students and undergraduates when I was in graduate school. I actually had I developed the whole teaching program while I was at UF. I really enjoyed the aspects of the academic experience where I felt like I was helping contribute to someone's future success. I really enjoyed seeing the aha moment. I used to teach summer science classes for high school students, and seeing them like all of a sudden get something and have that become a part of their sort of knowledge forever was a hugely rewarding thing. And so in industry, what that translates to is when you're working on a team of people, everybody is coming from very diverse backgrounds. People, I have people who ask me even now, hey, can you come to our pharmacokinetics team and tell us a little bit about how cell culture and cell line and antibody stuff works? And I'm like, you guys are actually interested in them? Like, yeah, we don't know. We've never had, so you see these little things that are a part of the broader team of getting, people that are on sort of the other side of things, whether that's regulatory or clinical, or just people who are on other parts of the technical team that are on the downstream or formulations team, and communicating, helping them understand and helping you understand what they're doing. That taps into that for me. And so for me, as long as everyone's developing and learning and growing and as a professional, and we're also hitting our milestones and delivering products and things like that. I mean, that's a big part of it. I do like the aspect of knowing that we're building towards a product that's eventually going to, hit the market or is going to make a difference somewhere. And that's always sort of in the back of my mind as a driving force. But I'll be honest, it's always been the people aspect of it that has been more rewarding to me than the economics of it. The economics is definitely there, and it's always there, and I enjoy that aspect to building a product and to contributing to that. But I really do enjoy the team component to what I do.
You find that the team component is now much more a part of your day-to-day than it was in academia?
I do. I really do. I mean, and I recognize everybody has a different graduate experience, right? So some of it depends on the type of work you do, or even down to the lab culture that you were in. I was the lab I was in as a graduate student. We had kind of two postdocs, two senior technicians. When I started, there was one other graduate student, but she graduated a year or two after I started. And so, but then I was the graduate student, and then there was these couple of other people. They were fantastic people. And it was a great environment working with those people. But I still felt like I had my thesis responsibility. I had my project. I had my, stuff that I had to be accountable for. And if somebody needed to help me learn a technique or whatever, the team that nobody would ever say, oh no, I'm too busy for you. There was still the collegial environment. But the way that I think in general, in most industry, you build these teams of very diverse backgrounds, roles, and responsibilities, and everybody's bringing something else to the table. And if anything, I have to suppress my my curiosity most of the time, because I probably still do. I derail meetings all the time because I'm just curious about, somebody outside of my area of expertise. Somebody comes in and says, oh, we're working on this, formulation development. We did this, and I'm like, wait a minute, why does that look like that? How does that work? How do and then people are like, that's not the point of this conversation. I'm reporting, but you end up, you have to rely on this broader team to come to the table with their expertise, their knowledge, to deliver their piece of the project. And there is some give and take. There is some back and forth on that. But it's a lot of sort of interdependence among project teams, and then within the individual sort of functional teams. So cell line development, upstream bioprocess, those meetings are a lot more, sort of co-learnings as people are doing different things and you're getting the benefit of their experience and stuff. And that's a whole nother team dynamic to what happens. So I enjoy that part on all levels.
So, Allyn, if you were to list them off, you from what I'm hearing you say, communication is key.
Yeah.
To be able to let a team work well together, the communication needs to be key. But you seem to be interested in the team dynamics and how that works and the people's improvement. Sometimes, and going back to the personal improvement books and so on, I'm reading one from Ray Dalio called Principles. And in there, he does talk about this idea meritocracy where there's an openness to be real with each other and identify many times, what might be negative things or things that are weaknesses. And if you keep addressing those weaknesses, eventually you're going to get better, like practicing and so on. The idea of being able to be open in a team, not only for the betterment of the science, but if you need more of a team member because they're not delivering at the pace or they're not delivering the quantity or quality that, how is that handled in industry? Is there a way to kind of say, okay, come along because that's not working out?
I mean, I've seen it handled a lot of different ways. There are ways that I disagree with, and there are, some of it is style. And I'm not going to say that there's necessarily one way to handle it. For me personally, I do feel, and I'm not sugarcoating it. I mean, I do feel very lucky that the people that I've worked with or the people that have reported to me have really been fantastic. And the funny part is I really do believe this. When you create an environment where people truly do feel like they're able to be real with themselves and they're able to be open with you, people are usually the first ones to open up about their mistakes or if they feel like they're not delivering to what they wanted to. I mean, it's and the crazy part is like I feel like I've made that change myself, in terms of if you constantly feel like you have to be perfect all the time, it's exhausting. I think when I started realizing that like it was okay to admit, even in a larger team, even in front of people who are, subject matter experts and a lot of stuff, that there's something that I screwed up or something that I didn't know or something that I wish I would have done differently. When you are willing to admit that, there's a burden that's lifted, and it allows you to do more yourself than you realized that you were holding back. And I think when you have an environment like that, you're the first one to go, like I've had those days where you come in and you finish the day and you're like, this was not my best day. It wasn't, you're just like this. I meant to do this and this, and I screwed this up. And you sort of, if you can even admit that to yourself or have a good, work colleague that you can do that with, it lets you reset without carrying that stuff on. I'll definitely share an example, which I think I still say was a major turning point for me in terms of how I process this kind of stuff. And this was fairly early on in my career at Elanco. I got involved when I first started. So we have a group that's external innovation, and they go out and look at biotechs and small companies to see new technology platforms or new therapeutics or things like that we could possibly partner with or something like that. And so they go out and they do this all the time. And a lot of times when there's a lot of technical information, they ask for scientists or SMEs or other things like that to come in and review it or meet with the company or something like that. And I enjoyed doing that. I got involved with that early on. And there was one particular product that I thought was fantastic. And I'm like, we need to partner with them. And they came back and said, well, there's a couple different companies that are looking to partner with them, and they're asking everybody to put together proposals, and they're going to select from that. So I was working with the external innovation team to put together a proposal. And at that time, I had less of an ability to gain perspective than I think I do now. And I felt that we were not getting enough institutional support from Elanco proper. And I felt like we weren't putting together a good enough offer. And we ended up not being able, we were not selected to partner with this particular company. And I was livid. I was at an 11 out of 10. And I just said, man, this whole process is messed up. And I was like, I need to fix this. Which, first of all, if ever you're in a position, especially in industry, where you're planning on thinking that you alone unilaterally are going to do something to dramatically fix an issue, probably you need to take a step back and think, okay, why is it that I think that I alone can fix this? Didn't have that perspective at the time. And so I put together this big slide deck with all this data, and I thought, part of the reason was they just didn't understand. So I was going to re-explain it to them. Also, horrible idea. And I called a meeting with, like my boss, our VP of research, the senior VP of R&D, the VP of development, the director of external innovation. I mean, it's literally like, I can't even imagine right now. I mean, I had a room full of probably like 75% of the senior management in R&D, along with a few other people from business development and some of the other lead people. And I started the meeting, and within, I essentially sat there and started telling them why they all were wrong, and why they had, how they must not have understood the real issue here, and all kinds of, and I could feel the meeting going sideways within 5 minutes, and just didn't know why the receptiveness wasn't there, and just was completely oblivious to the whole thing. And I finished the whole thing, and I could immediately tell that everybody in the room was not happy with me. And it just sort of ended. I mean, it was just sort of this, it was this catastrophic meeting that just sort of ended. And after that meeting, everybody sort of went their separate ways. And the director of my department kind of came up to me at my desk and said, so how do you think that meeting went? And I said, not good. I don't think it went well. I just don't know what happened. And he said, well, I just got off the phone with the director of this other group, and he's ready to fight you practically. And he said, well, we both agreed that's probably not productive. So we figured out, we'd like you to sort of sit down with us and figure out a sort of maybe a mentorship plan. And I had never given any thought to being mentored or having a mentor. And frankly, I thought that was all just BS and just some touchy-feely stuff that, that people do because they have to do. And I sat down with them the next day, And the other director guy said that he would be willing to sort of meet with me monthly and act as a mentor. And he said, but before you do this, before we start this mentorship thing, I want you to set up a one-on-one meeting, half an hour, with every single person that you had called into that meeting. I want you to ask their opinion of how the meeting went and how they felt, and anything that you think you could improve. And then I want you to keep your mouth shut and listen for the rest of that meeting. I did that, actually, and it was incredibly enlightening, because I got honest feedback. I came to the realization that multiple people took the meeting multiple different ways. So the recognition that not everybody is going to receive every message the same way, regardless of how you intend it. And in addition, I had the VP of R&D at the time tell me that he said, there was a point in time where if somebody had done that to me, that I had sort of wasted time like that, I would have wanted to grab him by the shirt collar and drag him out of the room. And he said, but that's not productive either. I just, having these meetings with these people and having people who I respected tremendously as sort of senior leaders, not only be willing to sit down and be honest with me about things I needed to improve on, but also be willing to help, sit down and say, hey, we can set up regular one-on-ones and figure out, mentorship, figure out, are there ways that we can help you, learn or develop. And that right there was like a massive eye opener, because, me in grad school would have just bulldozed all that stuff. But it made a huge difference, and it's impacted everything from, how I conduct myself at work, how I work with teams. It's changed how I parent. It's changed how I look at, my perspectives of just even dealing with my spouse, and how to have conversations where you actually listen to people. I know that that's a novel concept, but it was a tremendous opportunity, and it was a dramatic enough occurrence that it switched my thinking on a lot of things, and for the positive. So I know that I'm not going to necessarily say that's part of that's part of the average industry experience, but I think it's possible when you have a culture that values that you end up with empowering managers, supervisors, to have that kind of impact on people, which ultimately is a huge value to me. And I try to do the same kinds of things now.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for everybody to realize that there is investment in you, meaning that it's not like they're gonna just let you hang and fire you if it doesn't work out. It doesn't seem to be that way.
Yeah.
They've made an investment in hiring you. I'm sure, the headhunter or whatever, that was a substantial investment, and now they're investing in you to get better, and you to mature and grow. And that's a company, again, an environment that is interested in the betterment of their employees. And it seems like it's a great system, and a great way to hopefully retain people as well, because you're going to think twice about leaving a company that is taking care of you, taking care of your improvement as well. I love also how receptive you've been, and perhaps even the concept of accountability. The mentor not only gives you good advice and good guidance, but you must remain accountable to them, right? And that piece is so important. And even like how you recommended before, find yourself a partner find yourself somebody that you can rely on, like an accountability partner
Mhm.
that said, hey, I said I was going to do that, but I screwed this up. I didn't get to this. I really, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be getting back, right? That kind of camaraderie that exists, and that should continue to exist in industry, and it seems to be maybe even more so than how it is in academia, even though there's a whole
Mhm.
professor mentorship and
Yeah.
so on. What's the best advice that you got from one of these mentors? Do you remember anything that you can say?
Yeah, I would I mean the shut up and listen was a pretty good one. I think that was I think that definitely that was a shock to the system that really, it's makes you, especially for somebody who has a tendency to unintentionally dominate a conversation. Um, but oddly enough, it's uh, probably the best piece of advice that I've gotten, has sort of evolved over time. But my mom used to always say that never expect of others what you expect of yourself. Um, and in a way, I know what she was trying to say. Um, and in my adult life, in my professional career, so I follow a guy named Gary Vee. He's mostly marketing, but he's sort of the serial entrepreneur, and he's one of these other people who's sort of just this radically honest individual, super high energy guy. And he talks to entrepreneurs all the time. He gives conferences and things like that. And one of the things that he hears all the time from entrepreneurs is, well, when people start hiring people, when they built a business, they start hiring people. They're like, I can't find anybody who's willing to work as hard as me.
Yeah.
And the first thing he says to them is, well, it's not their business. It's not their company. Why would you expect them to work as hard as you when you own the business and they're your employee? Like when I first heard him say that, hearing my mom's voice of don't expect of others what you expect of yourself, ultimately that sort of morphed into this concept for me of uh you know what you value, what you see as progress or success or importance or whatever it might be, is not the same thing for everybody, and you can't make it the same thing for everybody. um and so that perspective of realizing that I might be doing something for one reason, or I might see something as this is the most important thing that needs to be done, so therefore I'm going to do it, doesn't always resonate with everybody the same way, and people's logic behind doing that is not always the same thing for the same reasons. And so that sort of concept of when I'm working on a team or I'm working with other people, that communication piece, if I don't communicate an expectation or a need or something else like that, and I'm not open to hearing back from them, what are the barriers to that? What are the impediments to that? Or understanding that there might be a reason outside of work. God forbid we have lives outside of work. There might be a reason outside of work where maybe today of all days was not the day that we were the most productive, right? I mean, it's that notion that, I walk into work carrying my specific life, my whatever baggage, whatever family stuff, whatever outside stuff. And if I walk in with an expectation that everybody else around me is going to be at that same spot, I'm going to be disappointed most of the time.
Yes.
And when you
Yes.
work with a diverse group of people doing diverse things, these are all intelligent, driven, scientific people. We're all here for a reason. We're all trying to do the best we can. And going and operating with the understanding that more often than not, people have the best of intentions when they're trying to get their work done. And when you come from that mindset, it changes how you react to things that people might do or say. And so
Yeah.
that sort of shift in expectation has probably been one of the best things that I've tried to keep in mind.
And I also think there is wisdom in what your mom taught you, in the respect that, you know, it, don't look so much on the outside. Don't compare yourself to others. Just focus on yourself and try
Yeah.
to do whatever you can. Don't have expectations that others are going to do. Just focus on you and have the expectation that you are going to deliver
Yeah.
and that you have what it takes to succeed. Allyn, what a story. What a story of courage, of exploration. I mean, also to go from Florida to California, jumping around, going to chase insects to catch their viruses and understand what they do. And I mean, what a journey of exploration, scientific exploration, which is awesome. Again, it tells me, and I hope the people that are listening to your story can dabble and pick up a few of these techniques. I feel like you, like a mishmash of all different molecular techniques and things that, yeah, I learned. I mean, I was probably one of the last people to ever do a Southern blot.
Mhm.
To look at copy numbers and the genome of an organism, and like, okay, well, but that's not necessarily something that we say, oh gosh, what a waste of time. But these are tools we've picked up, we've learned lessons from them, and I can see that you've continually picked up lesson after lesson, and you're constantly improving yourself as you go along. And I am certain that the people that work around you see that aptitude too, and they see that willingness to just continue to
Yeah.
improve and continue to work together and make sure that everybody is still motivated and focused in the same direction so that you guys deliver on time. It is so awesome talking to you. It's so good to hear your story. I thank you for sharing so much personal pieces of your life too, because you did go in deep. And I thank you so much for letting us
No
take a
problem.
peek.
No problem.
uh, what a pleasure catching up with you, and so good to talk to you. And thanks again for taking time to speak to us.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Tommy. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we're going to be talking next week to Arvind Kumar, which I know you know very
Mhm.
well. He is now the VP, I believe, here where I have it on my calendar here. He is a VP of research at Biome Edit, which is the spin-off company that came out of Elanco. We're excited to hear what that is like and what that adventure is also all about. So stay tuned, everybody, for Pathfinder. And again, Allyn Spear, thank you again for taking time, and what a pleasure. Have a great day, and we'll speak to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.